We begin tonight with news from Washington, D.C., where we are at the start of an unpredictable night for Congress, with some real implications for us here in the city, and many New York lawmakers on the front lines of last-minute negotiations within the Democratic Party. Earlier today, Congress voted to avoid a government shutdown, a deal that also included aid for storm recovery. And now all eyes are on Capitol Hill and some furious deal-making going on behind the scenes that could lead to a vote on an infrastructure deal potentially as early as this evening. For more, let's get the very latest from New York One Washington, D.C. reporter Kevin Frey. Good evening, Kevin.
Yeah, good evening, Earl. A lot of moving pieces. I've been likening it to a juggler you might see at the circus where they're trying to balance all the plates. Well, at least one of those plates is now off the table of what they have to worry about. As you mentioned, that government shutdown that was set to take place tonight, that has been averted because they did manage to pass that short-term funding bill, keeping the doors open, the lights on through early December. The president, though, still needs to, of course, sign that, which all indications are he will. Then there's the other crisis that they're dealing with, which is the impending default crisis if they don't deal with the debt ceiling. That's still a couple of weeks off. So the main focus today in terms of the backdoor wheeling and dealing, the negotiation, really focusing in on the president's agenda. And there are two really key pillars of that. Both are interlocked in some sense in terms of how this voting pattern is going to go. One is the infrastructure bill, hard infrastructure. Think bridges, tunnels, roads, etc. That is one thing that's already gotten through the Senate, waiting for a vote in the House. Then there's also this reconciliation package, big social spending. A lot of discussion on that today, what exactly that will look like. And that is key because progressives say if they don't have that bill passed, or at least some assurances about it, depending on which progressive you're talking to, they're not going to vote for the hard infrastructure bill. Basically, they're using it as leverage. When it comes to that soft social spending bill, things like climate change, things like healthcare, K-12 education, we got some more public negotiation, if you will, today in terms of what numbers and figures people are talking about. Politico reporting that there was a document signed by Senator Schumer and one of the key moderate Democrats, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, basically where Manchin laid out that his top line number is $1.5 trillion. The number we've been talking about for weeks now is $3.5 trillion. Obviously, I don't need to say there's a big difference there. Here's a little bit of what Manchin said today.
I brought the 1.5, as you've seen, I think, by now. The 1.5 was always done from my heart, basically what we could do and not jeopardize our economy. I've never been a liberal in any way, shape, or the form. And all they need to do is we have to elect more, I guess, for them to get theirs, elect more liberals. But I'm not asking them to change. I'm willing to come from 0 to 1.5.
But you're not.
Of course, in Congress, where the margins are so slim or basically non-existent in the Senate, you need Manchin along for the ride if you want to get that social spending bill done. Now, progressives not happy with the idea of limiting it down to $1.5 trillion. I did talk to Senator Gillibrand today. I asked her about that $1.5 trillion figure and the document that was released, that was reported by Politico. Here's what Gillibrand told me.
There's lots of numbers that work. It's not about a number. It's about, are we helping families? Are we meeting the needs that COVID created? And are we meeting the needs that were there well before COVID? And that's going to be the test for whether I'm going to vote for it or not. It's not about a number. It's about what does it do? Does it help people or not? And that I will assess as this bill gets written and as it becomes refined.
So some flexibility there, it seems, from Gillibrand. She also is somewhat optimistic that this could come together, not necessarily tonight, but over the next couple weeks. Then there is, as you mentioned, really the centerpiece of today, this self-imposed deadline that moderates wanted to get a vote on this infrastructure bill in the House. As I mentioned at the top, progressives don't want to vote for that until they have some assurances or a vote on the social spending bill, and that is where we are right now. The latest word is that the House will not come back for votes until 9 p.m. at the earliest, and it's really unclear if they'll actually vote on the infrastructure bill today.
So now, Kevin, for many viewers who may not have been following the ins and outs that you and I have been talking about each night, how is it that one senator from one of the poorest states in the country can simply decide that $2 trillion should come out of a bill that basically has most of the president's priorities? You know, how does one guy get to do that? That it should be $1.5 trillion and not $3.5 trillion?
Because at the end of the day, that is the makeup of the Senate, Errol, and you need his vote if you want to get this done. They're using a process that's called reconciliation, where they can go around the Republicans, but the Senate's split 50-50. You need all the Democrats in line and the two independents that caucus with them in order to get the bill done, with the vice president coming in and casting the deciding vote. So if Senator Joe Manchin, who is from a state that was won overwhelmingly by President Trump, who is really the only major Democratic figure in that state, if he doesn't want that much spending, he has a lot of weight. Now, at the same time, you're seeing progressives are trying to do a bit of a counterbalance here with threatening to hold up the hard infrastructure bill. The question is, will they stand firm in not moving ahead with that bill and trying to get some leverage for Manchin to bend somewhat? It's a lot of a staring contest. There are reports of backroom wheeling and dealing in the last couple hours, so that is where the state of play is right now.
Right. And what about what Senator Gillibrand said? I mean, in the end, if you're saying there should be $2 trillion less, for whatever reason Joe Manchin wants to make up, that does amount to saying there'll be less for climate change, there'll be less for low-income families, there'll be less for health care. That's really what that is, and there's kind of no getting around that, right?
At the end of the day, yes. And some of this you could see them maybe alter how long a program may last. That is part of the discussion as well. But as you mentioned, yes, less money, less programming. What Gillibrand was trying to do there, and this seems to be kind of where things are heading now, is we've spent so much time talking about these top-line figures, 3.5 trillion, 6 trillion, 1.5 trillion. The conversation that Gillibrand is trying to switch to, and you're seeing some Democrats try to switch to publicly, is let's talk about the programs themselves that are in the bill, what we want to prioritize, what we don't. That has been the gripe and the frustration that you've heard from a lot of progressives when it comes to Joe Manchin, to Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, that they have not been very specific in outlining what exactly they want.
Okay. Thanks very much, Kevin.